But I've got to say, the Welsh Assembly has been one of the great success stories of British politics. Now the Welsh people are not just supportive of their Assembly, they're actually positively enthusiastic. And even the Conservative Party, traditionally the most unionist party in the United Kingdom, now also it warmly supports the Welsh Assembly and wants to have more powers. Now, I consider myself to be a passionate Welshman, but I don't see a contradiction in being a Welshman but also being British as well. And in a modern world where identities are no longer straightforward as they perhaps used to be, I think devolution is important because essentially it's a rejection of uniformity and celebration and recognition of the worth of diversity. And that, I believe, is a hallmark of a modern democratic state today. Within Wales, we have a capital city, Cardiff, which has been transformed over the last few years and is one of the new emerging cities of Europe. The most popular holiday destination anywhere in the United Kingdom, believe it or not, is the city of Cardiff. That's not, however, to suggest that there's not more to be done. There's a heck of a lot more to be done. Wales is traditionally a poor part of the United Kingdom, and the economic and social transformation which has to take place has only just begun. The valleys of South Wales, where coal was mined in large amounts just about 100 years ago, is an area of chronic impoverishment. And I mention NEIGHBOURHOOD specifically because one of the most interesting developments over the last few years has been a very effective link, a partnership between the city of Newport and the second city of Georgia, Kyrgyzstan. And that's been an enormously successful partnership. It hasn't just been the normal exchange of local politicians. There's been more to it than that. And I think that's the beginning of something which is extremely exciting. But can I also mention too that in Georgia's second city, one of the things that we have seen over the last few years is, of course, the creation of a new parliament for Georgia in its second city, rather than the capital. We've seen the election for an elected mayor take place, and those have been successful. And I also think it's very, very encouraging and positive that here in Georgia, the process of decentralization and devolution is becoming an intrinsic part of the contemporary political agenda. There's also a principle which is, in some ways, an awkward principle to pronounce in the European Union, called subsidiarity. Now, subsidiarity essentially means decisions ought to be taken as close to the people as is practicable. And I think, although the European Union doesn't always practice what it preaches, but it's a good democratic principle. But it's also a principle which is vital for economic success and prosperity. And I'd just like to finish with one thought. You may or may not know that the patron saint of Wales is St. David. My name is David, but there's no connection. But the patron saint of Wales is St. David. One of the great Georgian kings, so I understand, was David the Builder. And he began to reunite Georgia once again, starting in your second city, Kyrgyzstan. And I would suggest that when we look at this principle of subsidiarity, what we all ought to do is recognize that it's all about people. And there's no more important person, in my view, than the historical figure of David, whether it be Georgian or Welsh.
Okay, thank you. I think you raised a very important topic there, and I think it's definitely something that perhaps would be more in the medium to longer term rather than in the shorter term for something that could come out of the EMP. I mean, I consider that the EU also has a sort of credibility issue when you're talking about its role in this region. First of all, because the DUP hasn't really delivered that much so far to the citizens. I think if they could see some tangible results, first of all, for example, when it comes to visa facilitation, visa liberalisation issues, this would be crucial because it's not always clear, but in some other countries, the image of the EU or the view of the EU from the population isn't always as positive as what we might actually consider it to be, particularly actually in this Southern Caucasus region. I'm not necessarily talking about Georgia, but certainly in Azerbaijan and Armenia. Another example is on the issue of territorial integrity. Why is it the EU can't recognise the territorial integrity of Azerbaijan, but yet it can do it for Georgia and for Moldova? This is an issue for the citizens of Azerbaijan. So now we're going to move on to our last speaker from Georgia, Mr. Godadze, who is Deputy Foreign Minister. Please.
Thank you very much, Amanda. So, no saint and no king named for but one noble Armenian family in the 9th century and one famous Georgian commander in the 10th century. So nobody's perfect. I will try to follow these very interesting presentations. More I speak on conferences and having published speeches, less I have to say about Europe and ENP. So I don't like to repeat things I've already said. And I will more concentrate on the issues of social transformation and with the linkage, of course, with Europeanization. If I say now that European Union or Europe is the main vector of Georgia's policy, I said virtually nothing. It's everybody says that, and in these days, everybody goes for Europe. You know, I think even if Prince Dracula or Jack the Ripper were alive, they would go for Europe. I'm less sure about Jack the Ripper, it was a Brit, but so just remember the previous government in Georgia under Mr. Shevardnadze, they were also for Europe. Then we had a very, almost non-existent state with corrupt bureaucrats involved in many embezzlements. Some of them were ethnic nationalists, but they were in favor of Europe. In many surrounding countries of Georgia, even the most democratic ones, Europe is still a positive reference. Our opponents are also in favor of Europe here in this country. They do rallies sometimes with European flags, and they also say that they are for Europe. But I cannot believe in sincerity or seriousness of being pro-European without serious willingness for social transformation. For social transformation, European transformation of Georgian society. That's why the proclaimed goal is one thing, and when it's claimed by people who in their everyday behavior or in their ideas contradict the very idea of Europeanness, it cannot be taken seriously. You cannot say on one side that you are for European Georgia or for a European country and continue to neglect the basic rights of your citizens, to steal money from the state budget, to take bribes from your citizens, and to play this fool's game. If you Europeans do not give us that, we go to Russia, or play Europe against Russia and Russia against Europe. This is the choice of post-Soviet leadership. This is the way how these post-Soviet people govern their countries. This is not our choice. You cannot say on one side that you were for European Georgia and make xenophobic statements, racist statements, believe that LGBT people have no right to live among us and in our society. And this is maybe the least aggressive thing I've heard in recent days from the people who oppose this community, this country. Without social transformation, deep social transformation, all these booming statements in favor of Europe are empty words in best case, and manipulation in worst case. My personal choice, a choice I made 1.5 years ago to join this government, was determined by the belief that this team wants profound social transformation of this country and to make Georgia really European. And I'm pleased to say today that I didn't make a wrong choice and I didn't make a mistake. Despite all difficulties, despite all resistance, despite all problems. This is the first government in recent history of Georgia which is not pro-European only by its general statements, but its deeds and profound conviction. And I don't want it to be the last one. Why social transformation is so important? There is not a single society without social change or social transformation. Even the most closed societies are subjected to social change or social transformation. We saw former dictatorships in Arab world, Egypt, Libya. Everybody thought that these regimes were very stable, but when they were confronted to radical social transformation, they failed. Something very important and interesting is happening in Iran since, let's say, 10 years, in Russia since, let's say, 1 or 2 years, and even in North Korea, which is maybe the most closed society in the world, there's some social change. We saw recently their new president in a zoo, he was caressing a baby bear. That's quite new, because I'm sure his father or his grandfather was not doing that. But the social transformation is not a linear process. There is no mythical sense of history. And there is no irreversible move towards progress. History knows reversals, and social change can go in both directions. One is extremism, conservatism in a negative term of the sense of this term, religious backwardness, or there is another sense, liberalism, openness, tolerance, etc. And this is an everyday fight, and we are in this fight in this country today. So the true Europeanization of this country is the victory of the second option, societal victory of the second option. So what is Europe? Besides a continent, even a subcontinent, or a peninsula of the Asian continent, as one famous writer said at the beginning of the 20th century, Europe is a civilization. This is European civilization, which is something more than institutions or regulations. What is most important is the birth or the emergence of what one German historian called European habitus. This is more than culture. This is the whole set of social behaviors, ideas, bodily techniques, and even sexual behavior. This is this is a process. The civilization is a process. This is a difficult progress of self-restraint, tolerance, and mutual acceptance. And this is something against radicalism and violence. There were serious setbacks in Europe in this sense also. And Europe has been maybe the most violent continent in recent history, in 20th century history. 2 world wars, Shoah took place in Europe. But the tragic awakening since this period, this tragic period, shaped the European Union and shaped modern European policies. Europeanization has civilizational impact on our society. And what we try to do, of course, and I would like very much to remain very modest, is to try to adopt sometimes unpopular reforms, social reforms, to make our society more prepared to join this family of European people.